What's going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC Reality Check, and this is your preview for WWE Wrestlemania Backlash. Yeah, it's a WWE pod, so it's just me. I'm not going to come up here and pretend to you guys that this is going to be the big granddaddy, the big spectacle, the big whatever. It's Backlash. It's what Backlash has always been. It's the retribution from WrestleMania. It's the fallout. It's the rematch central. Let's be real for a second. But we are going to talk about some other things. We are going to talk about the releases that happened recently in WWE. We're not going to talk about NXT Breakin' that just happened tonight. By the way, I'm recording this on Tuesday because, god damn it, I'm definitely not doing an NXT review. We are going to talk about WWE's interesting new stadium schedule later on in the part of the conversation where that becomes relevant. And I am going to, obviously, because the matches are what they are, I am going to talk instead about what they could mean in the future, because that'll at least give me something to talk about. But let's be real. With the stadium shows coming up, as I said, we're going to talk about that later on. This is a B pay-per-view, and it's a B pay-per-view that's basically, like we said before, a reflex from WrestleMania. So it's all kinds of rematches. Let's start right off the bat with Omos versus Bobby Lashley, which will transition very nicely into the conversation about the NXT releases. Now, I didn't do a full review of the releases. I didn't do a vid or a podcast about the releases because realistically, most of the names on that list I'm not familiar with. I know one of them was a referee. There was a lot of developmental talents that hadn't made it onto TV. There was Draco Anthony, who I literally had no opinion of. I'm going to briefly touch. It's really, really unfair, and it really, really makes me sound like an asshole. I'm fully aware of that. I'm going to touch on the 4 names on this list that actually mean something to me, because that's really all I can do. The big one, I mean, we're going to get to a conversation where it ties into Omos and Lashley in a second. The big one that hit me, obviously, was Dakota Kai. Dakota Kai, that's a real bummer. We never really got to see her reach her full potential in NXT, even back when it was good. She's been sort of bantered around. I thought she did the crazy gimmick pretty well, but other people shot that to shit because, you know, the spooky stuff isn't supposed to happen, and the crazy stuff isn't supposed to happen. We can't handle it. We can't handle that much flexibility in our wrestling. But they partnered her up with Raquel Gonzalez, who's now Smiley Raquel Rodriguez on SmackDown. Shoot me in the face, please. Dakota Kai is awesome. Dakota Kai is a loss to the company. Dakota Kai, a lot of the same things that I would have said about Tegan Nox, aka Nixon Newell, when she was released. It's hampered. I'm not going to say that I'm outraged, but like if I was outraged, it would be hampered by the backup on this, that she was recently offered a renewal on her contract because they wanted to keep her around. They wanted to see if she was going to re-up. Now, I don't know whether... Now, this is mostly from No DQ and What Culture, so take it with whatever you think of those two sources. I was about to say take it with a grain of salt. That sounds pretty shitty. But take it with whatever you think of those two sources. Just the very loose idea that she was offered a contract renewal, a new contract, a re-up on her contract, whatever you want to say, and she rejected it. And from that moment on, from her perspective, she thought the writing was on the wall. Now, how true that is, I don't know. But if she rejected the renewal, then she doesn't, like... It's not like she was itching to stay if they offered her a renewal of her contract and she rejected it. So it's not quite somebody asking for their release, but it's not quite, oh my god, somebody had the carpet ripped out from under them either. I mean, hell, I'm watching 3 other companies right now. Send her to Impact, send her to ROH, send her to AEW. I'd love to, as much as I think she deserves a stage the size of AEW, I would love to see her in somewhere like Impact, because like Dakota Kai, whether or not she continues to do her crazy shtick, mixing it up with somebody like Rosemary would be fun. Harland was apparently, again, same sources, released because he hadn't made as much progress in ring as they had expected. Now, they're not doing house shows. They're not doing the long legendary Largo loop anymore. So he's not getting his reps in, I would imagine. So I don't know how true it is that he's not as good as they wanted him to be, but he was sort of the weird Frankenstein heavy behind the awesome Joe Gacy SJW character that winds up all the right people, who I believe just got robbed of the NXT Championship tonight. Why don't I go full controversy? I really don't know. I really don't know what to do with that. They released Dexter Lumis and Persia Pirotta. So one half of Index and one half of Persia Pirotta and Duke Hudson are still there, and they had a weird awkward segment tonight on NXT as well. I've skipped over to Dexter Lumis because I don't really know what to say about Harland, because other than standing behind Joe Gacy and looking weird, what could you really say? He went in there and he thumped a couple of people, which makes him about as useful as Veer on Raw. But that's about it. Dexter Lumis, on the other hand, is such a weird one to me, because you guys know, even when we had Jake on here and we were talking about NXT a lot more regularly, I went way up and way down and way up and way down on Dexter Lumis. I was like, I didn't care, and then it was a good straight man for the Gargano, the Way stuff, and like, regardless of what he was doing, they seemed very adamant about keeping him on TV, this serial killer that wasn't scary at all. He had the no talking gimmick, and then, you know, when NXT became all about sex, which is also totally fine if you want to go that way, his entire gimmick was that he's shagging Indy Hartwell and apparently has a huge cock. I don't know, but through the old NXT, through the new NXT, they were adamant about keeping him on TV, so getting rid of him is a bit mind-bending. But then you get to the last one that I'm going to mention, who I found really, really entertaining in his role, and who ties into the Almost Lashley thing, was Malcolm Bivens, who, again, like Dakota Kai, rejected a renewal on his contract, supposedly, and was supposedly pitched a new role within the company. And that new role was to be the manager of Omos. Obviously, he turned that down. Obviously, that's why we have MVP turning on Lashley, joining Omos. The reason I mention all this is because the first match we're going to talk about tonight is Omos versus Lashley, now that MVP has turned on Lashley and gone with Omos, because I have to imagine that that's why. I have to imagine that that's why they took MVP away from Bobby Lashley, other than the fact that he was going wicked face, and put him with Omos instead. I have to imagine the promos between MVP and Malcolm Bivens would have been money. Would have been absolute money. MVP is as comfortable as you want anybody to be on the mic in that manager role, especially working with Bobby Lashley. And Malcolm Bivens is just, he's just fun. Like, he's got this kinetic energy where, ironically enough, MVP would have been the straight man in that battle of words, and I think that would have been really cool. And I'm talking about all this, and I'm talking about Malcolm Bivens, and I'm talking about MVP because... why are we beeping? Why is this a thing? Because I do not give a shit about Bobby Lashley versus Omos. I mean, they keep changing Bobby Lashley's entrance a little bit. Now they've got him coming out on the sort of Mr. Olympia podium thing. It's weird. They're still calling him the Almighty, which is sort of an egotistical, bombastic thing that you would do if you were a heel, but he's a babyface, so I don't really get that either. I'm going to stop my phone from beeping, because that's going to get annoying after a while. And Omos is just, again, I put him in the Dexter Lumis, Harland, Veer, whoever else you want to say. It's funny to watch him tell people off. When Cedric Alexander was trying to get back in MVP's good graces this week, and he came out with the big deep voice, "You must go now." But he's just a guy that comes to the ring in his street clothes and pushes people around because he's head and shoulders taller than everybody, which makes him slightly better than the Big Show. And Bobby Lashley, although I'm not itching to see him back in the world title picture anytime soon, goddamn, he deserves to be in something better than this. Am I right? Am I right? I'm gonna go with Omos, because MVP and Omos is the new pairing, the new act, whatever you want to call it. Lashley, I'm sure, will get something somewhere along the way. It would be cool. It would be really cool if Cedric Alexander, after he and Shelton Benjamin tried so hard to keep the Hurt Business thing alive, even without MVP, even without Bobby Lashley, and now being rejected by MVP and Omos. It would be cool to see Cedric Alexander come in and fuck over Omos as a way of turning babyface, but winning because of distraction isn't exactly a babyface thing for Lashley to do, and it would be something that MVP could harp on for a long time, which would make this rivalry go on, and I don't want it to go on. It is better than keeping him with AJ Styles, because him and AJ Styles being a thing just didn't make sense. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Omos, and I'm not that excited about it. Now, as I say, I must reiterate once again, there's only 5 matches that I'm gonna preview tonight, because I'm previewing this, as I say, I'm recording this rather on Tuesday. I've just watched NXT. NXT's dead, folks. There's a reason I brought back NXT Rewind. If you want to go check that out, it's a couple pods ago. We did NXT TakeOver Rival, and I might be bringing that series back just to remind myself of when NXT was good again. I started that series because it was COVID, and I needed to remind myself that anything was good, and now that they've killed NXT, if I bring it back, it'll be to remind me that NXT used to be good. Point being, I'm recording this on Tuesday, so they could add stuff throughout the week. They could add stuff on SmackDown, but right now this show's 5 matches, and honestly, that doesn't exactly hurt my feelings. You're also going to be getting, you will have seen it already if all things are equal. I will also be recording a preview for Under Siege for Impact, and I'll be honest, I'm more interested in that show than I am interested in this show. Let's talk about why Baron Corbin versus Madcap Moss. God damn it, folks. God damn it. We have, what's his name? Drew Gulak, who's auditioning to be an interviewer, to be a timekeeper, to be a assistant to the general manager, and we managed to squeeze Baron Corbin and Madcap Moss onto a pay-per-view. Now, granted, it's a small pay-per-view, but the point still stands. Corbin and Moss broke up after WrestleMania because of course they did, and Corbin stole Madcap Moss's, Andre the Giant trophy because of course he did, and he acts like he never liked Madcap Moss's jokes because of course he does, and I don't care. I didn't care about the last match, and I still gave you a preview. I don't care about this match so much that I'm not even going to give you a preview. I really don't care. I hope it goes to a no contest. I hope they somehow both lose. I hope they pin each other in the middle of the ring, because that's how much I care about this match. Now, what is fun, because it winds up all the right people, is AJ Styles versus Edge, round 2. Priest is banned from ringside, so the story is, obviously, Edge is still going to cheat. He's going to introduce the new member of Judgment Day. I love that it's the Judgment Day, is the name of their faction. I love that when he was posing with that scale in the back, it was a mock-up of the old WWF Judgment Day pay-per-view poster. I love that. That's great. It's going to be, the third member is going to be Tommaso Ciampa, and eventually the fourth member is going to be Rhea Ripley. That's what the rumors say. But in the meantime and in between time, they are building to a tag team match later on down the line, which I'm pretty sure will happen at Hell in the Cell, and that's fine, between Edge and Priest, or Judgment Day, and AJ Styles and his old buddy Finn Balor, because they did the 2 Sweet on Raw, and that's just fine. It's the second time they've done it. I mean, the first time was that pay-per-view where half the people got, infections and weren't on the show, and we got AJ Styles versus Balor out of nowhere. They did the 2 Sweet, and everybody freaked out. And now they do it now, and they do the 2 Sweet, and everybody freaks out, and it's all over WWE.com, so they want you to think all the things, but I'm going to put it to you like this. First of all, AJ Styles versus Edge is going to be a good match. Second of all, Edge doing all the, I'm halfway Undertaker, I'm halfway just a generic asshole heel is a lot of fun, because, he can't be doing this and he can be doing this. Apparently he can, because he is. Coming out on the big-ass, obnoxious, flaming throne at WrestleMania, fucking good shit. Him and Damian Priest doing spooky adjacent stuff, that's right up my street. And if they add Tommaso Ciampa, that's not going to hurt my feelings. And here's the thing. the bigger rumor, and we're going to talk about his match next, but the bigger rumor is that the third person that's going to join AJ and Balor is going to be Cody Rhodes, because, as you guys know, I'm not fully up on my Bullet Club stuff, but I'm pretty damn sure Cody Rhodes was in the Bullet Club at some point. So AJ Styles, who everybody wants better for, Finn Balor, who everybody wants better for, and Cody Rhodes, who can do no wrong in the eyes of most people, versus Edge, Priest, and probably Tommaso Ciampa at the next pay-per-view, which is Hell in the Cell. That's a pretty tasty implication right about there. I could be entirely wrong. I could just, Priest could say, oh, I know I'm banned from ringside, but I'm going to come down anyway and get Edge disqualified, and they could break up another cool tag team before they even get up off the ground. But I will say, one way or another, it won't be clean, but Edge is getting the win here. AJ Styles got the win at WrestleMania, did he? No, he didn't. Edge got the win at WrestleMania because of the Damian Priest interruption. Holy crap, WrestleMania has already fallen out of my head. I don't know then. Maybe Edge gets 2 on the bounce. AJ Styles needs some help from Finn Balor, and Cody Rhodes, if that is the case, comes in later on down the line. Now, the other possibility, and I will say I'm happy to see him back on the show, because apparently he's had a lot of trouble with WWE. Apparently he's been asking for his release and he didn't get it, so he's figured he might as well come back on TV if they're not going to let him go. The other option is Mustafa Ali. Now, Mustafa Ali's a great fucking wrestler. When they initially teamed him up with Mansoor, I thought they were going to make an awesome tag team and they were going to make their way with that. But apparently Mansoor is joining LA Knight's new faction on SmackDown on the dark matches with the Knight model management thing. But I'm sorry, as good as Mustafa Ali is, AJ Styles, Finn Balor, and Mustafa Ali is not as impressive a trio as AJ Styles, Finn Balor, and Cody Rhodes. And that's coming from me. You guys know how I feel about Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes ain't exactly my favorite person. I'm not gonna lie. But I will say, I will bow to the majority on this one. It is a big deal that he's back. It is really weird to see him back. So if they do that trio match at some point, trios for all the AEW fans out there, trios. If they do that trios match, it won't hurt my feelings in the slightest. It will lead into other things that we are going to talk about next, though. I am going to say Edge gets a second win, pisses off AJ Styles, and they escalate their game, etc. But it does lead us into the Cody implications of that. Leads us into, we might as well talk about Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins. Now, Cody Rhodes obviously got the hero's welcome at WrestleMania. I can't even deny that. It was pretty fucking cool. It's everything that the people that like Cody Rhodes wanted, and it's everything that we were speculating. It wasn't so much, hey, is Cody Rhodes coming to WrestleMania? It's like, what version of Cody Rhodes? Is he the American Nightmare? Does he have Kingdom? Does he have the American Nightmare, verbiage and imagery and all that? Are we getting AEW's Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania? And we absolutely did. They've modified his entrance slightly. They don't have that weird obnoxious elevator thing anymore. They have a combination of smoke and pyro in that little opening in the Tron, which I think looks cool. I think it looks better in some regards, but that's just me. Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. You can't have a bad match between these two guys. Seth Rollins, way underrated as usual. They went the dad route on Raw, which is tired because they've transplanted Cody Rhodes' style on AEW of, let me come out, let me soak up the crowd's love, let me cry a little bit, let me bleed a little bit, let me remind you who my dad is, to coming out on Raw and soaking up the crowd's love a little bit and let me cry a little bit, and I can't bleed because it's a PG show, but I'm still going to remind you who my dad is. That part of it I could do without. I've been saying that forever. I've been saying that on the AEW podcasts that I've done, and now I'm gonna continue on. I'm gonna be consistent with my opinion now that he's back on WWE programming. But that aside, it is good. He is good. His arrival at WrestleMania was fucking awesome, and like I say, he's not my favorite guy, but I can't deny that his arrival at WrestleMania was awesome. Seth Rollins was the perfect person to do it too. The way he's playing it off, really cool, as Seth unwinds and he just sort of sits there like, hey man, I showed up at WrestleMania and I beat you, and I've been respectful to you ever since. Like, you don't need to freak out like this. It's very, very similar on Seth Rollins' point to how Kevin Owens, who's not on this card, but how Kevin Owens is making this whole Ezekiel thing work. Ezekiel's just like standing there and saying, hey, how you doing? I'm Ezekiel. And Owens is losing his fucking shit because it blows his fucking mind. He makes that work. Seth Rollins makes this work. The way Cody Rhodes called him, you're one of the best sports entertainers out there. Like, I see what you're doing, but whatever, it's fine. I don't know. Something sketchy, because this is a smaller show. There will be something sketchy. Seth will get his win back. I will say that Cody Rhodes, in interviews and backstage and on podcasts and whatever, has made a lot of hints towards bringing back the Winged Eagle Championship. And obviously, to do that, he would have to go and face Roman Reigns. Now, if that is the case, you guys know me, I would love to see the Winged Eagle Championship back. The big WWE logo titles are obnoxious. But that type of talk leans towards him finishing off things with Seth, getting a second win, and heading towards Roman Reigns. But that's going to happen at a larger stadium show, as we're going to talk about later on. But if he does bring back the Winged Eagle title when he does get himself in the title picture, that could explain why, even though Roman unified the titles at WrestleMania, why we still have two belts. Like, they're not going to unify them into one belt and then have Cody change them. It'd be putting a hat on a hat, I think is the expression. But if that doesn't get the job done, if we're not going towards Roman Reigns just yet, then I figure some kind of screw job here. Seth, in his own mind, evens up the score. Maybe even Kevin Owens, because he's not on this card, comes in and helps Seth Rollins, because Kevin Owens did fight Cody for him, even though he called him a big fat ass during the match, which was awkward as hell. So if you get some interference that gets Seth a win here, you get sort of the rubber match at Hell in the Cell. I mean, Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins inside Hell in the Cell, I don't think is going to hurt anybody's feelings. But at that point, I think you give Cody the win, and then we're into 2 or 3 stadium shows where I think then you send even... I gotta go with what the majority of people want here. As I say, my feelings on Cody Rhodes aside, you have him tie up his business with Seth Rollins at Hell in the Cell. You get a run of stadium shows after that. Then that's when you put Cody and Roman Reigns in the same ring at the same time, because Roman has both titles, means he's the title holder of both shows, which means he typically, or at least in theory, would have to take challenges from both shows, but they haven't really been too clear on how all that is going to work. So I will say, either way, no matter what they're doing next, I think Seth Rollins evens it up here, and they go to a third match at Hell in the Cell, where whether he goes for Roman after that is a little bit more of guesswork on my part, but I do think he's going to be going towards Roman Reigns at some point, maybe SummerSlam, maybe before SummerSlam, but all this talk about the Winged Eagle Championship is one of those things that if they don't at least somewhat do it, they're going to rile up all the right people, as I say. Charlotte versus Ronda in the I Quit match for the SmackDown Women's Championship. I would really like this to main event. I really would. Now, that goes to partially because of the star power of Ronda Rousey, and partially because Charlotte is the best full-time wrestler that they have in that women's division. Yes, I'm saying that over people I like. I'm saying that over people like Bayley, over people like Asuka, over people like Becky fucking Lynch, over people like Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, who do deserve a shot. You've got the best WWE wrestler there against the biggest name that they could bring in to that division right now. It should be the main event, especially because the main event is a little bit of a shit show. This is, in my opinion, where you put the belt on Ronda Rousey, because it being an I Quit match, Ronda being the real sport person can come away from an I Quit match being like, yeah, she put me in a position that I couldn't get out of, so I quit and I lived to fight another day. Charlotte's whole persona leads itself to ultimate embarrassment by having to utter the words "I quit." So the title aside, Ronda gets more out of winning the belt than Charlotte does out of retaining it, because of how their characters are and this type of match that it is and what it's taken us to get here. The match at WrestleMania wasn't everything it could be. Let's be real for a second. We know what these ladies can do, and I say that in the most respectful way possible. I'm not saying that as a toss-off comment. But we know what these ladies can do. Just let them do it. They're going to beat the shit out of each other. There's going to be a kendo stick involved. I can almost guarantee it. I mean, if you want to go full Batista and duct tape somebody's feet around the ring posts, then go for that as well. I'm fully pulling for Charlotte and Ronda to be the main event. Because if you look down this card, it is the only title match on this card, which is why I'm absolutely certain that they're going to add something extra to the card after this. As I say, I have to reiterate once again for people who want to correct me down in the comment section, or hell, even correct me on Twitter at Spaz Phoenix. This is the 5 matches that are on Wikipedia / on WWE.com on Tuesday, the 3rd of May. And this is what I've got to go on at the moment, which is why I'm branching off into other conversations. And where I do want to branch off is that there's no Raw Women's Championship match, and there's no WWE Women's Tag Team title match, which means we're going to have a whole pay-per-view without the agenda trifecta, which is fucking amazeballs. But what it also means is all the other women that were heavily featured at the end of Raw this week in what was a pretty damn good trios. There you go. AEW fans, have a trios. In an awesome trios match in the main event of Monday Night Raw this week, you're leaving out the newly returned Asuka. You're leaving out Becky, who's in this insane, breakdown phase. You're leaving out the most underutilized people on your roster, Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, Sonya Deville. Which is a crime, because you've needed to push Naomi and pretend that Naomi was good. So what did you do? You jobbed Sonya Deville. You needed to push Bianca Belair. You needed to pretend Bianca Belair was good. So you jobbed Sonya Deville. I don't want to get too serious for a second, but you got somebody like Sonya Deville who went through what she went through and had to step away from wrestling, gradually stepped back into the spotlight while not being in physical competition, and now, through her own force of will, has got herself to a point where she can be back in the ring performing, and you have her jobbing to garbage. It's really, really, really sad. But yeah, there is no Raw Women's Championship match, which leads me to the question. It leads me to the question that I want to ask all you guys. We have unified the World Championships. We are, not tonight, but we are eventually uniting the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Championships. How soon before they unify the Women's Championships? And are you for it or not? Because I, realistically speaking, after tapping out Charlotte, or making Charlotte Flair say "I quit," would love to see Ronda Rousey tap out the Rat at the next pay-per-view. That would be glorious. Oh yes. We'll talk about the 6-way main event. The 6-man tag main event. We were getting hyped for weeks and weeks and weeks that we were going to unify the SmackDown and Raw Tag Team Championships. It was going to be the Usos, who are easily, and people will say the New Day. New Day is a very, very close second. The Usos are the most solid, dependable, over tag team that is actually a tag team in the WWE. So when you unify those titles, you're going to put it on them. That's what's going to happen. But they were going to face RK Bro, which solidified way more than anybody ever thought it would. When they put Randy Orton and Riddle together, it was like, okay, yeah, this is designed to fall apart. WWE love to pull apart actual tag teams. Here's a thrown together tag team that's been thrown together so that they can fall apart. And apparently they wanted to break them up like 3 months ago, and Randy Orton and Riddle both went to upper management and said, have you listened? We're kind of over. Randy Orton is the master of the hot tag, etc. So they've been hyping for the past couple of weeks this unification of the tag team titles. And then last week on SmackDown, they just decided to not. And they decided to just throw Drew McIntyre into the mix, which is fine. The guy had all his title success when there was no audience. I want him back in that title picture, don't get me wrong. But instead of unifying the tag titles and having Roman Reigns have a cursory title defense of the newly unified Universal Championship against anybody at Exhibition, hell, give Ricochet a shot and have it be the Intercontinental Champion versus the World Champion or some fucking nonsense like that. Instead, we have a match with the Raw Tag Team Championships, the SmackDown Tag Team Championships, and the newly crowned unified WWE Universal Champion, Drew McIntyre, and none of it is on the line, and it's just 6 dudes. And on the one hand, I hate saying that because the match is gonna be good. Roman is the best he's ever been. Don't at me. The Usos are fucking awesome. Riddle's over, Randy's over, Drew McIntyre's over. Everything about this match is good except for the fact that it doesn't matter. And that's bad. Now, I'm gonna branch off again. Why do I think they did this? Because I do, as much as I am reluctant to stick up for WWE, or even try to apply logic to anything that WWE has done, WWE is changing their methodology when it comes to pay-per-views. They're trying to put, at least, it looks like, at least in the summer months, they are trying to get out into way more stadiums and way less small arenas, which is a big indicator as to why Backlash, which is taking place in the Dunkin' Donuts Center, is not a very big show. A lot of rematches, a lot of matches that are going to be good, but not nearly as good as it could be. Which also does not make me feel very good or make me look very forward to Hell in the Cell, which is taking place in the Allstate Arena in June. Now, once we get to July, in the beginning of July, we have Money in the Bank in Allegiant Stadium. We have SummerSlam in the Nissan Stadium. We have over in the UK, when we get to September, we have Clash at the Castle in the UK at the Principality Stadium. And when we get to November, apparently, put a big asterisk beside this one because I don't know if it's 100% true, but apparently we're going back to the Saudi Stadium to do another Saudi show, and that's going to be TLC. Now, bigger buildings, bigger audiences, you need bigger attractions for those shows. So you save your big marquee things for those shows. Now, believe it or not, and as much as it pains me, that does make sense to a certain degree. You saved the unification of the world titles for WrestleMania. At the very least, I believe they're going to wait till July when they move Money in the Bank, which is a big 4 turn to a big 5 pay-per-view, into a stadium. I can see them doing the tag team title unification there. Now, I'm assuming that it's going to be RK Bro and the Usos still, but I'm not entirely sure. But you need to have people lined up for these shows, and you need to have people lined up before these shows. Now, you got to fill Hell in the Cell and Money in the Bank before you get to SummerSlam. Because what I think is going to happen is you're going to get somebody from Raw stepping up. You're going to get, I don't even know who's a big name. You could get, for the hell of it, for one night, for one pay-per-view, probably Hell in the Cell or whatever, you could have Randy Orton step up and say, look, I'm done fucking around with your cousins, give me a shot at the title. That'll get us through Hell in the Cell. Money in the Bank, you could do Drew McIntyre. SummerSlam's gotta be Roman and Cody, right? SummerSlam's gotta be Roman and Cody. I don't think that. But I also do think as well, they're gonna swing it back around to Drew McIntyre for a second time when they go over to the UK. Because even though we know he's probably not going to win, he's probably going to get a pretty good reaction over in the UK. Now, you could do him, you could do Sheamus, you could do Ridge Holland, you could do, oh, there you go. Former long-time NXT UK champion, Butch versus Roman fucking Reigns at the Principality Stadium. I don't know. TLC in Saudi Arabia, I think by that point, if they're going to take it off Roman Reigns, it'll be off him by the time we get to TLC. That's just my thing. Or, you know what it is? If they did, and now I'm thinking about this totally on the fly because I'm looking at the notes I have scratched down in front of me. If you do some random challenger, like I say, Randy Orton, pick a name out of the hat, or if you have Seth Rollins step up to Roman Reigns again, and that's your story for Hell in the Cell. If he's not doing something with Cody, then you go to Money in the Bank, and you do Drew. Then you go to SummerSlam, you do Cody. Maybe you put the belt on Cody, and then maybe Drew McIntyre steps up to Cody for Clash at the Castle. What do you guys think of that? Then Cody goes on to carry the belt. I don't know what Cody's view of the Saudi Arabia shows is. I think he was pretty vocal about it when he was on the other side of things. So maybe you don't get a world title match out of him at TLC, at the Saudi show. But it's a very cool thing in a way. Like, as bad as WWE is sometimes you can't overcome a good visual. And a full stadium, yes, even a full Saudi stadium, is an impressive thing to look at. We saw Elimination Chamber take place. Yes, it was in Saudi, but yes, we saw Elimination Chamber take place in a huge stadium. It made that pay-per-view feel different. When we take a concept like Money in the Bank, which hasn't been in a stadium since WrestleMania, that's going to be a different feeling. SummerSlam has already been bigger the past couple years, which is fine. Clash at the Castle is going to be an entirely new concept, so that's going to establish its own view. But again, we get back to something that's established like TLC. TLC in a big stadium is going to feel different. So, am I making excuses for WWE? Kinda yes, but I'm making excuses for WWE in the rare case where it actually sorta kinda does make sense. Holding off on a one-on-one between Drew or Cody or, like I say, Randy Orton, Seth Rollins, whoever it's gonna be, until you get to these big stadium shows where you can put those big marquee one-on-one matches on, does kind of almost make sense. Now, where I take the credit away from them is you shouldn't have teased the unification if you were going to do this. That was a fuck up. All of this to say nobody thinks that the other team has a snowball's chance in hell. Like, the Bloodline is winning. If they were doing the unification this Sunday, I would say without a shadow of a doubt the Usos are walking out with those titles. They do want to do what Undisputed Era did, except with twice as many belts, do they not? They want to have the Usos be the double tag champs. They want Roman to be the double world champ. If they brought up, honestly, if they brought up Solo Sikoa tomorrow, who's already like withering away in NXT, and put the US and IC titles on him so that he could be the champion twice, it wouldn't surprise me at this point. If they want to double strap Naomi because they think Naomi's a thing, it wouldn't surprise me. Nobody going up against this thing that is the Bloodline is going to lose at this point. So that 6-man is going to be good, but it's very, very predictable. And hopefully, as I say, it'll give us an idea of what's going on in the future. It very, 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 very much feels like Backlash and Hell in the Cell are little humps that they need to get over before they do Money in the Bank at Allegiant, SummerSlam at Nissan, Clash at the Castle at the Principality, and TLC back over in Saudi Arabia, if that's actually a thing. I'm not going to lie to you guys, and I'm not going to feign super, super, super excitement for this show. There's the odd thing on here that could be really fun. There's the odd thing on here that could lead to some really cool things going forward. But at the end of the day, even though they call it WrestleMania Backlash now, at the end of the day, it's Backlash. And we all know exactly what Backlash is. Don't go into it expecting any more, and you should be fine. We'll all make it out clean on the other side. Anyways, I've been Spaz, your YWC Reality Check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I'm tagging out. Bye, guys.